Hey guys, it's Sam, and this is my spoiler-free review for Among the Beasts and Briars by Ashley Poston. This was one of the books my Patreon supporters voted on last month. They actually got 2 books that I read last month. Every month, my Patreon supporters vote in a poll for a book that I will read and review, at least one, if not sometimes more. We also just updated a bunch of things, so there's like more tarot readings, monthly vlogs are back. There's a lot of stuff. Go and check out the Patreon if you're interested. It's linked on the screen. It's called The Bibliothecary. So this right now is a standalone YA fantasy, but there is some potential for future books. Ashley Poston is like sort of what you call a mid-list author, which means she's not necessarily like always a bestseller. And I feel like when that happens, publishers don't always invest in multiple books, but the end of the story does have potentially more. So just putting that out there if you're watching this in the future, and there's more books, and this is like a series now. So this follows the main character of Saris, and she is the best friend of the crown princess who's eventually going to become the queen, and they live in this very small kingdom that's next to a forest. And years ago the forest was like overrun and like sentient, and it still is, but the kingdom and the royals are the people who keep them safe from the forest. They went and visited the Lady of the Woods years ago and got some kind of power from her, and they keep everything safe. Well, the king dies, and before the princess is able to be crowned, something happens, and Saris ends up being the one that has to go and try to find this Lady of the Woods again because of everything that's going down, and everything goes from there. So there's a lot of elements to this that are really cool and interesting that I want to talk about that I wasn't necessarily expecting from this book, and I almost didn't read this book, and I'm glad that I did because I had so many things that were so good for me and like tropes and things that I really enjoyed. The main thing here being the world building. I loved the world building in this. This is, like I said, a sentient forest that's evil and corrupting. What happens is almost the very beginning, the forest ends up like basically corrupting like the whole town. So it turns people into like forest corrupted body horror monsters, which, if you guys know me at all, is like one of my favorite things. I am scared of most things. I love a forest taking over human bodies. Nature is healing. So that's a really cool element. Also, our main character has a best friend who is a fox, and I love a little fox companion, but also something happens with the fox, which I will get to because I didn't know this was gonna happen, but I also think it's good for you to know that going in because I think more people would read it potentially if they knew about some of these like little things. And it's early on, so it's not like it's a huge spoiler or anything. But we have this little fox. We have journeys through, again, a sentient forest, and she has nature magic because as a kid she was like potentially corrupted by the woods, but it didn't actually like take her over, so she has power over nature. You know, I love nature magic. So there's so many things here and like symbolism. The Lady of the Woods, potentially like a goddessy, Baba Yaga-y type entity, I guess. So lots of things going on here that I love. Then as far as our characters, our main character Saris is the best friend of the princess, but she is also the royal gardener's daughter. So again, we have this nature magic element. Her best friend is this fox. And the book like really grapples with this, like her way to help everybody, but feeling like she's not a royal, so like what is she supposed to do? But she has this nature magic, and she has a lot of sort of survivor's guilt because the way that she got her nature magic, some of her friends died. So there's some dark elements here as far as like death of children and death of a parent earlier on, and lots of body horror. Like I said, like, there's some gross stuff, but again, I love it. But I ultimately really liked her as a character. And then as far as the fox is maybe not a fox, right? The fox might be a fox. At one point is not a fox. So the fox is a character and called Fox. And the perfect mix of like this person who is a fox and thinks like a fox, and the transformation that he goes through as far as like the character development stuff was really good. And then we do have, because it's a YA book, we do have romantic tension with Saris and the fox as a person, to be very clear. And I loved it. As you guys know, I really gauge my like shipping on like how much my bones sort of ache for them. And it doesn't happen very often these days, actually. But these two, I was like, oh, I'm pulling for you guys so much. So yeah, and then it's like this whole thing of why he became a human is like, is that gonna go away? All this stuff, so loved it. As far as the plot, there's lots of twists and turns. All the magical sentient forest stuff. There's eventually also a bear companion who is not a human, don't worry. And so like the bear's around. All of the like myth wrapped up in this. Again, all the twists and turns. The way that wrapped up at the very end is what kept it from being completely a 5-star for me, but I still really enjoyed all of the twists that it took. There were some times where I was like, we're gonna go in this direction, and then we didn't, but then we circled back to it. So everything sort of made sense and was foreshadowed in a really good way, which I like. And again, there was elements at the end that weren't perfect for me, but there's also some stuff, the very last like little, I guess, sort of epilogue has some POVs from other characters that we didn't see because it's only in those two characters' POVs. And so there's potential for other things. For example, I didn't bring this up. All of Ashley Poston's books that I've read, she just has a world, no matter what she's writing, that's just like not homophobic. Like there's just casual mentions of like sapphic or Killian relationships. Like it's just casual. And so one of the characters that is mentioned there with this like sapphic relationship has a little POV at the end, and then another character who potentially needs like a redemption arc has a little POV chapter. So I'm like, are we getting more? Because I would love it. I am not reading a ton of YA fantasy these days. You guys know that if you're watching my wrap-ups at all. But this I would continue to read in this world because they would all be sort of like companion standalones, I think. So yeah, I really liked this. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. It's not perfect, but I read it in 2 sittings. Gobbled it up. If you like the elements that I like, of like lots of nature, nature magic, sentient forests, body horror shit, Lady of the Woods, all that stuff, you're probably gonna like this. So yeah, comment below, let me know if you've read this book and what you thought of it. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see all you guys soon. Bye.